Well, it's officially 2024, so firstly, Happy New Year, everyone. If, like me, you spent a lot of time with your family, or maybe playing with your new toys that you got for Christmas, you might have missed some things over the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to make sure that you're fully brought up to date with anything that you might have missed, and there's a few things that even I didn't know about or wasn't aware about until this morning, and some of them are, well, they've got to change. So first off, let's talk about the mechanical Grinch that everybody's been using for not just speed runs, but pass runs and just everything in general. Now, this probably isn't anything new to you because you've probably been using it yourself. I've been raiding over Christmas and I've used it myself as well on multiple characters. Now, if you happen to grab one of these from underneath the Christmas tree, they do have a limited duration. So if you're thinking you're going to save it for phase 2, you might want to check how many days are left on it and actually get it used. But looking at the actual amount of damage that this thing's been doing is absolutely ludicrous because it's like level 58. So just looking at Scottejaye, for example, here, which this was our raid last night, I was using the mechanical Grinch and it done 5.3k. Literally 48% of my overall damage just came from something that was basically fire and forget. And if we look at literally any top passing DPS on any boss in Black Fathom Deeps, pretty much every one of them is using a mechanical Grinch. Now, whilst I've seen nothing about it at the moment, I've been out of the loop just as much as you, so I'm hoping that at some point in the new year, all of these mechanical Grinches are just going to be ripped out from the logs, because now it's unobtainable. It just makes it literally impossible for you or me or anyone who hasn't got a Grinch now to be able to pass against these people that did use them over Christmas. Don't get me wrong, it was really fun using them because it was great seeing how much damage he was doing, especially as me as the healer, for example. But I definitely feel like a limited time pet should not be counted on logs long term. That being said though, if you do still have one, again, make sure you get it used, because if they're not stripped out of the logs, then you might as well try and get yourself some 99s. Even though, soon enough, it's not going to matter because Phase 2 will probably be dropping this month. Now, while we're talking about the festive items that you could get while the Winter Vow event was actually active, you could get Preserved Holly. Now, Preserved Holly are not soulbound, so you can actually buy these off the auction house, but there's been a neat little trick that's been found, which I was absolutely spammed to death with on Discord, of people like, oh my god, have you seen this? Why have you not made a video? Well, I've been making no videos. I've been chilling, enjoying Christmas. But now I'm back, we've got to talk about it. So if you jump on a flight path with Preserved Holly in your bag, whilst you're actually in the air, you can click the Preserved Holly to use it on yourself. You'll then see that you get a buff to say that you're now moving 60% faster, but obviously you haven't physically got a mount yet, unless you're talking about your Ashenvale mount, but I mean you can actually use this anywhere. So once you land, don't move your character and simply log out and log back in. When you log in, you're now going to be mounted, going at 60% speed, and basically, the only time you're going to lose it is if you actively dismount yourself. If you stock up on Preserved Holly, you can use this to get around pretty quick wherever you are. And whilst it's something that I do see being changed once Blizzard are back in full swing, because they're probably still recovering from Christmas and New Year themselves, it's definitely something that you might as well make use of. If you've got the Preserved Holly in your bag and you're like, well, what am I going to do with it? Or you've chucked it in the bank, at least now you can use it to temporarily have a mount. The only thing here is if it doesn't change, stocking up on these for Phase 2 is going to be pretty important, because every time that you go to a flight path, you're trying to rush to level 40, you can have temporary mounts pretty much all the way from 25 to 40. So that's worth considering, but probably a bit of a risk because, like I say, it's so janky and it's clearly a bug that it'll probably change. Next up, just before Christmas, there was a few class changes, which, again, you may have missed. So we had Druid, Priest and Shaman that had a few little changes. First of all, Druid's Lacerate base cost was reduced to 10 rage where it was 15, which, that's very nice. Also, Mangle in Bear Form's base cost was reduced to 15 rage. This was down from 20, which both good changes for Druids that want to tank. I still feel like most Druids are cat at the moment because it's actually fun. Priest's Shadow Word death base damage was increased by 103%, and the bonus damage it receives from spell power has been increased by 50% as well. Still trying to fix casters, which is good, but when we look at the logs, we can quite clearly see that it's going to take a lot more than just increasing Shadow Word death's damage to bring Priest up anywhere near the top, let's say 5 or 6. And the last minor change was to Shamans, where Shamanistic Rage now always grants 6% of the caster's spell damage as mana, as intended. So this was just a minor little hotfix. Obviously, it wasn't giving the correct amount of mana. There's also been some discoveries around PvP, and mainly in Warsong Gulch. So in Warsong Gulch, it looks like damage is being reduced by 20%. So players on the forums and Reddit and elsewhere have been reporting that it's a bug. It actually looks like it's intentional and not a bug. So like Wowhead have put on this post here, you know, Blizzard did add the resilient items to reduce damage taken in Warsong Gulch by 5%. This is actually going to be applied on top of the stealth 20% damage reduction that's already present. present. When we look at some of these examples, you can actually see the amount of damage being done in the outdoor world versus the damage being done in Warsong Gulch. And across loads and loads of different people's testing, it is quite clear that there is definitely a 20% damage reduction that's being applied to everybody, like everybody in Warsong Gulch, except for pets actually. Pets are taking full damage. If you were to remove this 20%, people would just be blowing other people up ridiculously fast. So I do see why it's present, but it would have been nicer to have seen this resilience type effect actually coming from PvP items. So as you're working on reputation with Warsong Gulch, or you're doing your Ashenvow events, maybe there was a currency where you could actually get up to 25% damage reduction, but from actual PvP gear, rather than just everybody gets it. But just my opinion. Wowhead also put out a really good post on a breakdown of how the PvP honor ranking system actually works. And the reason I just wanted to mention this is because of the add-on. So whilst it's not massively important right now in Phase 1 when you can only get to rank 3, they're talking about Ranker, and I actually use Ranker in-game as well. So what Ranker actually does, it's going to show you how much honor you need or how many kills you need to progress to the next rank. Now, I've not actually been on hardly at all over Christmas, like you can see, so I need to actually go and get 15 honourable kills, and then it'll actually start to show what sort of honour I'm going to need to get to my goal, with my goal being rank 3, obviously. Now, I've barely done any PvP on the mage because it's just not as fun as the paladin. Fairly obvious. But if you don't already use Ranker, it's absolutely worth using. If you wanted to have a look at this post, I'll stick a link to it in the description because it does go over the full updates to the PvP honor ranking system, which is not only in Season of Discovery, it's actually on Classic Era as well. If you haven't got rank 3 already, you can get Sergeant's Cloak, which is a pretty decent cloak for everybody. The last one I really don't want to talk about, but it's had so many upvotes on Reddit and I've had so many messages about it asking me if I'm going to do it myself. I've got to talk about it. So everybody's been mentioning this particular post where you can get level 40 right now via PvP. Now, you can't get level 40 right now. Obviously, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you can start working on getting to level 40 right now. So what people are actually doing is getting the PvP marks of honor and then restoring them to the account, which lasts 30 days in the mail, and it grants 1200 XP per turn-in. Now, don't get me wrong, 1200 XP is a decent amount of XP to be getting, but you're going to have to do a lot of Warsong Gulch to be able to get from 25 to 40. You would have had to have been pretty much living in there for the last few weeks at least. So people are currently complaining that a lot of people have been doing this and they want it changed. So people can't instantly get to 40. And even if it wasn't 40, even if they instantly got to, let's say, 29, 30, you know, it ain't even got to be max level. It's just skipping a big chunk. I haven't actually got a problem with this. These kind of things where people are investing time now for a payoff later on down the line, I don't really see an issue with. If it's keeping Warsong Gulch busy and people are queuing because they think they're going to get a lot of XP, you know, from actually stocking up on these, I don't really care, to be fair. The problem with it and the problem with things like this has always been the same thing. It's the item restoration tool. We find new ways to exploit this system time and time again. From deleting all of your supply crates right at the start of Season of Discovery to be able to get to Honoured, to get your Honoured rune with the supply logistics, to even in Wrath of the Lich King where you delete your Ashen Verdict ring so you can have 2 different Exalted rings from ICC for 2 different specs. It's nothing new to see something like this and actually know that people are going to exploit it, but do you think it needs changing? I mean, 1200 XP and, you know, being able to stock up on that now by doing loads of Warsong Gulch, like I said before, if it's keeping Warsong Gulch queues short and it's keeping the game active and alive when we're in a little bit of a period of time where I've got to admit, even I'm a little bit like, just can't be bothered, you know, I'm just logging on for raids. I don't think having something to do is that bad. Maybe if they reduce the XP a little bit to something a bit more insignificant, like let's say 600 or 500 a hand in, so it really isn't a big amount, because like I say, I don't even think 1200 is a lot, to be honest with you, in the grand scheme of things. If they reduced it even further, but then allowed people to continue to PvP, to collect marks and, yeah, abuse the item restoration tool, you know, it is what it is. Now, that's about all the news that I feel like I missed personally, and maybe you missed as well. So if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. The content is going to be coming thick and fast. I am still enjoying it, even though at this moment in time, I just want the next phase. I don't know if you feel the same way. Maybe you're really enjoying level 25 still. Let me know in the comments. I'll see you on the next one.